I never expected things to turn out like this. As I sit here, reminiscing about how it all started, I can't help but wonder if I made a mistake. Maybe I should have seen it coming sooner. You know how people always say family comes first? That's what they told me over and over again. And for the longest time, I believed them. I'm Emily, and I'm the eldest of 3 siblings. Growing up, I always thought it was my responsibility to take care of everyone, even when it meant sacrificing my own dreams. Liam, my younger brother, was always the golden child. He was smart, ambitious, and full of dreams about going to college and living a life full of opportunities. But there was something I didn't realize: how much of that dream would come at my expense. It all started when Liam got accepted into his dream school. The family was ecstatic. Mom and Dad, Robert and Susan, were so proud. They talked about his future like he was already a success. Meanwhile, the first stood there in the background, doing the math in my head, trying to figure out how I could possibly make this work financially. You see, our parents didn't have the means to fund his education. They didn't need to say it directly. It was obvious. Their subtle hints, "college is so expensive these days," my mom would say, were enough. I had a job as a mechanic, and though it paid decently, it certainly didn't cover the tuition of a top-tier university. But Liam was my brother, and despite the financial burden, I figured I could handle it. What was the harm in helping him out, right? It started small: books, groceries, a little bit here and there, but it quickly escalated. Before I knew it, I was paying his rent, his utilities, and even for his weekends out to unwind. Every time he asked, there was always an excuse, a promise: "I'll pay you back when I graduate," or "Mom and Dad just can't help right now." The worst part? My parents didn't exactly encourage me to say no. In fact, they made me feel like it was my duty, as if I had no choice. Family helps family, my mom would remind me. And I, being the older sibling, thought I was doing the right thing by stepping up. But deep down, I was resenting it. Every sacrifice I made, every shift I worked late into the night, felt like it was for nothing. I kept thinking that once Liam graduated, everything would be worth it. That was the plan. But the truth was, things didn't seem to get any better. While I was skipping meals and working long hours to make ends meet, Liam was living a completely different life. He was posting pictures of fancy dinners, weekend trips, and designer clothes on social media. Meanwhile, I was barely scraping by. I tried to tell myself it was temporary, but the longer it went on, the more bitter I became. How long could I keep putting my life on hold, while his seemed to progress without a hitch? I kept telling myself that eventually he'd realize what I was doing for him, that once he was settled into college, he'd show some gratitude. But it never came. Instead, his entitlement only grew, and it was more than I could take. This was just the beginning of the mess that would soon explode. It wasn't long before the cracks started to show. I had been paying for Liam's rent, his textbooks, and even his nights out for months. But the tipping point came when he casually mentioned studying abroad for a semester. It wasn't just a suggestion, it was an assumption. Liam didn't ask me if I could afford it. He didn't even hesitate. "I think it would be such a great experience," he said over the phone one evening. His tone was light, carefree, as if it was a done deal. "It costs a little more, but it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." I sat there, gripping the phone in my hand. The silence on the other end was deafening. I could feel the tension building in my chest. This wasn't just another expense. This was the final straw. How could he ask me for more money when I could barely keep up with the basic costs? I wasn't sure how I was supposed to respond, but my parents, Robert and Susan, didn't help the situation either. As always, they jumped to his defense. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance," my mom insisted when I tried to explain my side. "You'll figure it out. You always do." It was then that I realized how much my family had taken me for granted. No one seemed to care about what I was going through. No one cared about the fact that I was working 2 jobs just to keep everything afloat. They only cared about Liam's future, as if I didn't have my own. When I finally gathered the courage to tell Liam I couldn't afford to pay for his study abroad program, he acted like it was no big deal. "Maybe you should just get a part-time job," he said, laughing. "It's not like you have anything better to do." His words stung more than I ever thought they would. To him, I was just an ATM. His expectations had grown so out of control that I didn't even recognize the person he had become. I had always believed in family, in helping each other out, but this felt like something else entirely. I tried to talk to my parents about it, hoping they would finally understand. But as usual, they brushed me off. "She's your sister. You should be proud to help her," my mom said, her voice dripping with disappointment. Pride? What about my pride? What about the sacrifices I was making? No one seemed to care about how much I was struggling, how I had been running myself ragged for months to make sure Liam didn't have to face any real consequences. It wasn't just the money anymore, it was the principle. I was being taken for granted, and no one, especially Liam, was acknowledging the toll it was taking on me. But I was starting to reach my limit. Something inside me shifted. This was no longer about helping a family member, it was about me. I had to start looking out for myself, or I would lose everything. It was time for me to stop enabling this behavior, no matter what the consequences were. But I had no idea how far things would go from here. I'll never forget that family dinner. It was supposed to be a casual get-together. Mom had invited me over, saying she wanted to catch up. Liam was back from school for a break, and I thought, maybe this time, things would be different. Maybe for once, they'd notice what I was going through. But no, it was just like all the others. As soon as I walked into the house, I could feel the tension. Mom and Dad were fawning over Liam, asking about his classes, his social life, what he needed for school. They barely even acknowledged me. Not a single question about how I was doing. I sat down at the table, trying to keep my cool, trying to pretend like it didn't bother me. But it did. It bothered me so much I could feel the heat rising in my chest. I wanted to say something. I wanted to scream, to make them see me for once. But I held back. I always held back. Then, the conversation turned to Liam's study abroad program again, as if it was a topic we hadn't already covered 1,000 times. He started going on and on about how amazing it would be, how everyone at school was doing it, and how it was such a great experience that he couldn't pass up. The way he talked about it, so casual, so entitled, it made my stomach turn. He wasn't even considering the fact that I was already stretched thin, that I had been living off little more than scraps just to keep him in school. But then, something happened that I didn't expect. He turned to me, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "I hope you're ready for a little extra work, big sister. These programs don't come cheap." I froze. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. How could he say that to me? How could he stand there, in front of our parents, and talk to me like I was just his personal bank? Like I was some kind of backup plan he could rely on no matter what. I wasn't ready for it. And in that moment, I realized that I could no longer stay silent. My blood started to boil. Every ounce of resentment I'd been holding in for months came rushing to the surface. The sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the hours spent working overtime at the mechanic shop. It all came crashing down on me, and for the first time, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I put down my fork and stared at him. I felt my hands clenching into fists beneath the table. "You're joking, right?" I said, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. "You think I'm just going to keep funding your lifestyle forever while you sit around doing nothing?" The room fell silent. Liam's eyes widened, and I could see the shock on his face. He wasn't used to this. He wasn't used to me standing up for myself. For years, I had been his personal ATM, and now I was finally done. "Maybe you should get a part-time job," I said, trying to keep my tone light. But the sarcasm was thick in my voice. "I don't know, maybe that's a good idea since you seem to have all this time to go out and post pictures of fancy dinners and designer clothes on Instagram." Liam laughed. The kind of laugh that was meant to belittle me, to make me feel small. "A part-time job? That's funny. I'm too busy with school to do that. Besides, I don't want to look like I'm struggling." Struggling? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. There he was, flashing his new clothes and designer bags, living a life of luxury, while I was killing myself to make sure he didn't have to worry about anything. And now, he was acting like he was too good to work a few extra hours to support himself? The nerve of him. My parents, of course, immediately jumped to his defense. "Emily, don't be like that," my mom said, her voice sharp. "She's your sister. You should be proud to help her build her future." Proud? Proud to what? Proud to ruin my own future for his? Proud to keep putting my life on hold just so he could live out his college fantasy? It wasn't fair. And yet, here they were, telling me to just keep going, to keep sacrificing for Liam. I felt the rage bubbling up inside me. "Proud?" I repeated, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. When did it become my job to work 2 jobs so that Liam could live in luxury while I get nothing in return. When did I become the one who had to give up my future so he could have his handed to him on a silver platter? The silence that followed was deafening. Liam's jaw dropped, but he quickly recovered, folding his arms across his chest and giving me a scornful look. "There it is," he muttered. "The martyr routine." The word hit me like a slap in the face. Martyr? Was that what he thought of me? A martyr? Someone who sacrificed everything for the good of the family, only to be thrown aside when they didn't need me anymore. Martyr? I repeated, my voice rising. "I'm not a martyr, Liam. I've been giving you everything I have. My time, my money, my dreams, all for you. And this is how you repay me?" The room was tense now. My parents were too shocked to speak, and Liam was standing there, still trying to act like he was in control. But for the first time, I wasn't intimidated. For the first time, I wasn't going to let him manipulate me into silence. "You know what?" I said, standing up from the table. "Go ahead and call me a failure, Liam, but at least I worked for everything I have. What have you done? Nothing. You've sat there, living off my paycheck, pretending like you're better than me, and I'm done with it." I turned to my parents, my frustration boiling over. "And you two are no better. You've enabled this. You've let him treat me like this for years, and now you expect me to keep going? I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not paying for anything. Not his rent, not his tuition, not his lifestyle." Liam's face went pale. For the first time, I saw genuine shock on his face. He hadn't expected this. He thought I would just keep going, keep giving, keep sacrificing. But I wasn't going to let him have that power over me anymore. "You can't do this," Liam shouted, his voice shaky. "You can't just leave me like this. After everything I've been through." I didn't even flinch. "Figure it out," I said, my voice cold. "I've been doing it for years. Maybe it's time you learned how to take care of yourself." I grabbed my jacket and walked out of the room, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. It was over. Finally, after all these years, I had stood up for myself. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. But I knew the fallout was coming. I knew Liam wouldn't just let this slide. He wasn't going to take this rejection quietly. And sure enough, the next morning my phone started blowing up. But this time, I wasn't going to answer. The first message I received the morning after the dinner wasn't from my parents. It was from Liam. His text was passive-aggressive, a sharp contrast to the anger I felt when I walked out of that house the night before. "Thanks for ruining dinner. Hope you feel good about leaving your own brother out to dry." I stared at my phone, the words flashing on the screen. It stung, but it didn't sting as much as I thought it would. The guilt I'd been carrying around for months, years even, was gone. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I owed him anything. I had done more than enough. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I knew if I did, it would be just another way for him to manipulate me. Just another way for him to guilt me into helping him again. And I wasn't going down that road. The next few messages were worse. He started blaming me for everything. "You're really going to leave me like this? After everything I've done for you?" He wanted me to feel guilty, like I was the one who had done something wrong. But I wasn't going to fall for it. This wasn't about guilt anymore. This was about taking control of my life. And for once, it wasn't about what he wanted. By the time my mom called me, I was already prepared for the guilt trip. It was a phone call I'd been expecting, but it still made my stomach churn. "Emily," she said, her voice thick with disappointment. "How could you do this to your brother? He's struggling. He needs you. And you just turn your back on him?" Her words hit me like a slap in the face. "He's not struggling, Mom. He's been living off my paycheck for years. He's been pretending like everything is fine, and I've been the one footing the bill. I'm not going to do it anymore." I could hear her sigh on the other end of the line. "He's your brother, Emily. Family takes care of family." I almost laughed at that. Family takes care of family? Was she really saying that to me? Had she forgotten that for years I had been sacrificing my own life, my own future, to help Liam live his? Family didn't take care of family like this. It didn't work that way. I wasn't supposed to be the one carrying the weight of everyone else's problems. "He's not a child anymore, Mom," I said, my voice shaking. "It's time for him to grow up and take responsibility for his own life. I've done enough. I'm done." There was a long silence on the other end, and for a moment, I thought maybe she was finally starting to understand. But then she spoke again, her voice filled with a kind of sadness I couldn't ignore. "You're tearing this family apart, Emily. You're turning your back on us. On your brother. Turning my back? Was that what this was? I wasn't the one who had been selfish. I wasn't the one who had been asking for handouts. But I could see it now, their manipulation. They wanted me to keep playing this role, to keep sacrificing for Liam's future. And they wanted to make me feel guilty when I couldn't do it anymore. It wasn't love, it was control. I'm not the one who's tearing the family apart, Mom, I said, my voice firm. Liam's been manipulating all of us, and you've let it happen. You've enabled him to act like this for years, and now you expect me to keep cleaning up his mess. I'm done. He has to figure it out for himself. My mom didn't say anything else. She hung up, and I could almost feel the disappointment radiating through the phone. But I didn't care. I couldn't care anymore. I had made my decision, and no matter what they said, I wasn't going back. Later that day, I received a call from my dad. His tone was different from my mom's. It wasn't filled with disappointment. It was more of an angry, accusatory tone. You're being selfish, Emily. This is your brother. You're punishing him for no reason. He's struggling. I had heard all this before. I knew where this conversation was headed, but I wasn't backing down. I'm not punishing him, Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm teaching him a lesson. He's had everything handed to him for years. It's time for him to face the consequences of his actions. He didn't like that. You don't understand. He's been under so much pressure. He needs your help now more than ever. Pressure? I almost laughed. He's been living like a king, Dad, and I've been the one supporting that life, working myself to the bone, just to make sure he doesn't have to face any real consequences. I'm done. He can figure it out on his own now. The line went silent. I knew my father was angry, but I didn't care. I couldn't care anymore. The guilt, the resentment, it had all been building up for so long, and I couldn't keep carrying it for him. I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for someone who didn't appreciate it. The fallout didn't end there, though. The next few days were a blur of angry messages from Liam, guilt trips from my parents, and whispers from family members who couldn't understand why I was doing this. She's your sister, they'd say. How could you turn your back on her? But it wasn't about that. It wasn't about turning my back on Liam. It was about finally standing up for myself. It was about realizing that I couldn't keep sacrificing my future for his. I couldn't keep living my life for other people. I had to take control. Then, things took an unexpected turn. A few days later, I got a call from Liam's landlord. The payment for his rent hadn't gone through. Apparently, Liam had told him that I was the one paying his rent. I was floored. He had gone behind my back, telling his landlord I was covering his rent, even though I had stopped paying it weeks ago. I wasn't sure if I should laugh or cry. This was Liam's reality now. He had no backup, no one to lean on, and for once, I wasn't going to be there to pick up the pieces. You need to talk to Liam, I told the landlord, my voice calm. He's not my responsibility anymore. It felt good, in a twisted way. It felt good to finally let go of the weight I had been carrying for so long. But it wasn't over. I knew the worst was still to come. Sure enough, Liam showed up at my door a few days later. He looked disheveled, panicked, completely unlike the confident, entitled person I had known for years. He was different now, desperate. He knocked, and I opened the door, not knowing what to expect. "You can't do this," he said, his voice shaking. "You can't just cut me off. I'm going to lose my apartment. I can't go back home. There's no room for me there." I stood there looking at him. He wasn't the same person I had been supporting. This wasn't the Liam I had sacrificed everything for. This was a stranger, someone who had used me for his own gain, someone who had never appreciated what I had done for him. "I'm not your safety net anymore, Liam," I said, my voice firm. "You've been using me for years, and I'm done." He blinked, clearly not understanding. "But you're my sister. You're supposed to help me. This is what family does." "No," I said, shaking my head. "Family supports each other, but they don't take advantage of each other. And until you understand that, don't come back here." I closed the door without another word, leaving Liam standing there, stunned. And for the first time in years, I felt in control of my own life again. The days that followed were a whirlwind of confusion, guilt, and a strange sense of relief. For the first time in a long time, I had finally drawn a line in the sand. And yet, the fallout from my decision was just beginning to unfold. After I shut the door on Liam, I thought he would give up. Maybe, in some twisted way, I expected him to finally understand the consequences of his actions. But of course, that didn't happen. Instead, the guilt tripping, the manipulation, and the relentless messages continued. I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt every time my phone buzzed. It was Liam again, sending me passive-aggressive texts, making me feel like the bad guy in all of this. "You've really abandoned me, haven't you? After everything I've been through." The texts just kept coming, each one more desperate than the last. And at first, I felt that old tug of guilt in my chest. I almost replied, just to let him know I hadn't forgotten what we had been through. But then I reminded myself I wasn't his backup anymore. I wasn't the one who was supposed to fix his life. I kept ignoring him. It was hard, but deep down, I knew it was the only way for him to learn. He had to face the reality of his situation, his choices, his responsibilities. And if he couldn't handle that, it wasn't my problem anymore. But the real shock came when I started hearing from other family members. It seemed like the entire family was suddenly involved, either defending Liam or condemning me for what I had done. It was like I had committed some unforgivable sin by choosing to stop helping him. My aunt was one of the first to call. At first, I thought maybe she would be on my side. But when she spoke, it was clear she didn't understand what was happening. "I heard what happened with Liam," she said, her tone full of judgment. "You can't just turn your back on him like that. He's your brother. You should be supporting him through this." I could almost hear the disappointment in her voice. But I wasn't about to back down. "I am supporting him, Aunt, by letting him figure this out on his own, by making sure he learns that he can't keep depending on me forever. It's time for him to grow up." The phone call ended with her telling me that I was being unreasonable. She said that Liam was struggling, and I should be there for him in his time of need. She didn't see the bigger picture. She didn't see how long this had been going on, how much I had sacrificed, and how little gratitude I had gotten in return. She couldn't see that I had been enabling his behavior all these years. But what hurt even more than the family's judgment was the way my parents reacted. After the dinner, after I had made my decision to stop helping Liam, they started playing the victim. They called me up, one by one, making me feel like the villain. My mom's voice trembled when she called. "Emily, I don't understand. How could you do this to your brother? He needs you right now. You're his sister. Don't you care about him anymore?" "Of course I care about him, Mom," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "But I can't keep doing this for him. He's been living off my money, my time, my energy for years, and he's never once appreciated it. I've been sacrificing my own life to support him, and I can't do it anymore. You're tearing the family apart," she said, her voice breaking. "This isn't how family works. You don't just turn your back on someone who needs you." But I wasn't turning my back on him. I was finally forcing him to face the consequences of his actions. It wasn't about cutting him off, it was about teaching him a lesson. I wasn't going to be the one to keep enabling his entitlement. A few days later, I got a call from my father. His tone was filled with anger, and his words were sharp, blaming me for everything. "How could you do this, Emily? Liam is struggling. You're supposed to be there for him, your family." But I wasn't listening to that anymore. I wasn't going to let him guilt trip me into giving up everything for Liam's sake. "He's not a child anymore, Dad. He's an adult, and it's time he learned how to take care of himself." "You're just being selfish," my dad said, his voice seething with frustration. "You're punishing him for things that happened in the past. You can't just walk away from your family when they need you." I had to bite my tongue to keep from saying something I would regret. I could feel the anger bubbling up again, but I refused to let it control me. "I'm not punishing him," I said quietly. "I'm teaching him. If you can't see that, then that's on you. I'm not going to sacrifice my life just to keep him comfortable anymore." That was the last time we spoke. My dad hung up, and the silence that followed was deafening. Then, things took a strange turn. The next morning, I got a call from Liam's landlord, asking about the rent. It had been unpaid for several weeks, and apparently, Liam had told him that I was the one covering the cost. I couldn't believe it. I had stopped paying his rent months ago. How could he still think I was the one who was responsible? I told the landlord what I had been telling everyone else. He's not my responsibility anymore. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. But the situation with Liam didn't end there. The drama continued to unfold. And as the days passed, it became clear that Liam's life was spiraling out of control. I heard through mutual friends that he had been evicted from his apartment, that he had nowhere to go, and that he was calling up anyone he could to ask for help. But no one was willing to give him what he wanted. Not anymore. A few days later, I got a call from Liam. He was frantic, desperate, and his voice cracked as he spoke. "You don't understand. I can't lose this apartment. I have nowhere else to go. Please, Emily, just help me one more time." I couldn't believe it. After everything he had done to me, after everything I had given up for him, he was asking me for one last favor. But this time, I didn't hesitate. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sorry for him. "Figure it out, Liam," I said, my voice steady. "I've been doing it for years. Maybe it's time you learned what real struggle looks like." I hung up the phone, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely at peace. A few weeks later, I heard that Liam had moved back in with my parents. Apparently, they had taken him in again, coddling him like they always did, enabling his behavior one last time. But I didn't care anymore. They could handle him now. He was their responsibility, not mine. I focused on my own life after that. I threw myself into my work, started saving up for the future I had put on hold for so long. The guilt, the resentment, it all started to fade. I was finally free. And then, one day, I got a call from my mom again. She wanted to talk. I knew what she was going to say before she even started. "Emily," she said, her voice quieter than usual, "Liam's been spreading lies about you. He's telling everyone that you abandoned him, that you don't care about your family." I wasn't surprised. It was exactly what I had expected. But I wasn't going to defend myself anymore. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. "I'm done, Mom," I said, my voice calm. "I've done more than enough. I don't need to explain myself to anyone." And that was it. After all the drama, the guilt, the manipulation, it was over. I moved on with my life, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was living for myself. Liam's life continued to spiral downward, and eventually, he had to face the consequences of his actions. As for me, I learned a valuable lesson. No one can take advantage of you unless you let them. I had let Liam take advantage of me for years, but I wasn't going to let that happen anymore. I was taking my life back, and no one, not even family, could stop me. Story 2. It's a strange feeling when your life unravels in the most unexpected way. For me, it started about 15 years ago when I first met Dan. I was just turning 18 out with a few friends to celebrate my birthday, and there he was, 40, confident, charming, and kind in a way that made me feel special. At that time, I didn't know how much I needed someone like him. I grew up in a house full of chaos. My parents fought constantly, and my father was absent for months at a time before he passed away when my little sister Abby was born. My mother, struggling to handle the grief, became so attached to Abby that I often felt invisible, like I didn't matter as much. It was hard to pinpoint the exact moment I began feeling like I had lost her. She was my sister, and yet she was always the one my mother doted on. Sure, my mother did her best for me, but it was clear Abby was her emotional anchor after Dad left. Then came Dan. He was everything I didn't know I needed. He was supportive, caring, and he treated me like I mattered. We had a love that felt like it was built on something real. I'd never felt so loved before. We married after 4 years, and despite everything we had, I was eager to start a family. But Dan, wise as always, encouraged me to go back to school. He said we needed to be stable financially, and he helped me pursue my master's degree. He wanted us to be in the best position to be parents when the time came. It was everything I ever wanted, until it wasn't. After 5 years of marriage, I found out my world was a lie. Dan, the man who promised to build a future with me, was sleeping with Abby for 6 months. I found out when he said he had to go out of town for a week for work. But instead of being out of town, he was in a hotel room with my sister. It was the kind of betrayal that just shatters you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, let alone seeing. Abby, the sister I had protected, loved, and cared for, was the one who betrayed me in the most painful way possible. And Dan, my husband, who had once promised to be faithful to me, didn't even seem sorry. When I confronted him, he said he didn't love me anymore, that I wasn't the same person he fell in love with. He accused me of not giving him enough attention. That cut deeper than I cared to admit. In the midst of all of this, I discovered I was pregnant, a pregnancy that ended in miscarriage, a consequence of the emotional stress. And Dan? He didn't even care enough to be there when I needed him the most. He was spending his weekend with my sister, the one who had taken my place in his life. I should have seen it earlier. There were signs, small, uncomfortable moments, where Abby was too touchy with him, and Dan sometimes lingered in ways that weren't normal. But I never thought it would come to this. It broke me in a way I didn't think was possible. And yet, my mother took Abby's side, telling me to just move on. She urged me to forgive, to make peace. She wanted me to accept kept it as if it were normal, as if Abby had done nothing wrong. And as much as I tried to cope, the devastation was overwhelming. I felt like I had lost everything: my marriage, my sister, my unborn child, and the family I thought I had. I considered giving up. I felt like I had no one left, like there was no point in living. But then, in what felt like a twist of fate, my best friend Tina came to my rescue. She was moving to another state, and she asked me to come with her. By then, I was already divorced, but staying in the same small town meant running into Dan and Abby. It wasn't healthy for me, and I needed to get away. I took Tina's offer. It was time to rebuild. It wasn't easy adjusting to life in a new state, but it was the fresh start I needed. I met new people, found a community that supported me, and for the first time in a long time, I began to heal. It wasn't fast, and trust didn't come easy, but I found myself slowly opening up again. Then a year later, I met Tony. He was kind, patient, and unlike anyone I had ever known. I hesitated at first. Trust didn't come quickly, but he showed me in every way that he was different. He loved me, genuinely. We got married a year ago, and now I'm pregnant with our first child. I'm finally in a place where I feel whole again. And yet, just when I thought I had moved on, my past came crashing back into my life in the form of an email from Dan. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. He emailed me out of nowhere. The email was a jumble of regret and self-pity. He told me he missed me, that he had tried looking for me but couldn't find me. He claimed he was miserable with Abby, and that she didn't treat him with the same love and respect that I did. He said he was thinking of filing for divorce, and that he was hoping we could try again. He even went so far as to say that Abby had cheated on him multiple times, including with his cousin. The whole thing was just a mess. He couldn't seem to grasp that we were done. He didn't seem to realize that his actions, his betrayal, had destroyed something irreplaceable. As I read his email, part of me wanted to feel pity for him, but mostly, I just wanted to laugh. He had chosen Abby over me, and now he was complaining about the mess he had gotten himself into. To me, it was a clear case of karma, and if anything, it made me feel even more secure in the life I had built with Tony. I knew exactly what I needed to do next. I wasn't going to let him back into my life. Not now. Not ever. So, I wrote back. I took a deep breath before I sent the email. I wanted to make it clear that I had moved on, and that there was no room for him in my life anymore. He had made his choice, and it was with Abby. Not only had he cheated on me, but he had also ignored me when I needed him the most. After everything we'd been through together, the woman I once was, the one who would have taken him back in a heartbeat, was gone. She had died the day I lost our baby, and he was the one who killed her. I told him I was now married to a man who truly loves me, someone who cherishes me, and that I was pregnant with our first child. I had finally found the family I had always wanted. I made it clear that I had no interest in hearing from him again. I also added a final note. He made his choice, and it was with my sister. She could have him. I pressed send, feeling a weight lift from my chest. There was no turning back now. But of course, he wasn't done yet. He replied within an hour, something about how stupid he was to think I would still want him back. He told me I would always be his baby doll, a nickname he used to call me, but now it just made my skin crawl. Honestly, it wasn't just the words, it was the sheer audacity. Did he really think I'd just forgive him and welcome him back into my life? It was insulting. A few minutes later, I got an email from my mother and sister too. My mom was congratulating me on my pregnancy, telling me how happy she was that she was going to be a grandmother. Abby also sent a message, excited about being an aunt. It stung. I couldn't even wrap my head around the fact that these people, the ones who had betrayed me in the most cruel way possible, were congratulating me. How could they act like everything was fine, like they hadn't ripped apart my life for their own selfish reasons? I blocked them both. I didn't need any more reminders of the people they had shown themselves to be. The next few days were tough. I cried a lot, honestly. I couldn't help it. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the lies, losing my child, losing my family, it all hit me again. I felt so foolish, like I had been groomed by both Dan and my sister. The guilt of not seeing it sooner, of not realizing what was happening before it was too late, weighed heavily on me. But then Tony, my husband, stepped in like he always does. He noticed I was struggling, and without a word, he took me out for ice cream. It sounds simple, but it meant the world. I wasn't alone anymore, and he was here for me, a steady hand when everything felt like it was slipping away. It wasn't long after that when I began to get a better grip on things. I realized I had been carrying around this hurt for far too long, letting it control me. Tony loved me. He had been there for me when I was at my lowest, and he'd never once wavered in his support. I was building something new, a life full of love, peace, and healing. A couple of weeks later, I got another email from Dan. This time, he told me he was miserable with Abby and that she had been disrespecting him. He mentioned how she had cheated on him again, this time with his cousin, and how he couldn't take it anymore. He said he was planning to file for divorce. And then, of course, he begged me to reconsider. He wanted us to try again, to be the family we once were. At this point, I just had to laugh. His life had turned out exactly as it should. Messy, disappointing, and full of the same betrayal he had put me through. It wasn't my problem anymore, and I wasn't about to let it become one. I didn't reply to him again. I didn't have to. The truth is, as much as I wanted to keep holding on to the past, I couldn't. I couldn't keep letting Dan and Abby haunt me. I had a new family now, one that respected and loved me. And in a way, it felt like I had been given a second chance to get it right, to be happy. I'm 5 months pregnant now. It's still hard to believe sometimes how far I've come from where I was just a few years ago. I know there will still be moments of pain, moments when I'll think about what I lost, but I also know I'm building something even better now. My daughter will grow up in a home where love and respect come first. Dan and Abby are in the past, where they belong. They've made their choices, and I've made mine. I don't need their approval or their apology. I've moved on, and I've never been happier.